والله سميع عليم. إذ قالت امرأة عمران رب إني نذرت لك ما في بطني محررا فتقبل مني فتقبل مني إنك أنت السميع العليم. إنك أنت السميع العليم. فلما وضعتها قالت رب إني وضعتها أنثى والله أعلم بما وضعت وليس الذكر كالأنثى وإني سميتها مريم وإني أعيذها بك وذريتها من الشيطان الرجيم. فتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن. فتقبلها ربها بقبول حسن وأنبتها نباتا حسنا وكفلها زكريا كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا كلما دخل عليها زكريا المحراب وجد عندها رزقا قال يا مريم أنى لك هذا قالت هو من عند الله قالت هو من عند الله إن الله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر إن شانئك هو الأبتر صدق الله العلي العظيم just see وقف ايه I'll just stop. Could everyone please start making their way upstairs for the prayer, inshallah, for salat. Inshallah, we're just going to say the adhan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن مولانا عليا ولي الله أشهد أن مولانا عليا أمير المؤمنين وأولاده المعصومين بالحق حجج الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح
حي على خير العمل، حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، لا وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: وعليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة، ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أمه، إني أشم عندك راحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جدا يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي يا أمه إني أشم عندك راحة طيبة كأنها راحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جده، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك راحة طيبة كأنها راحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء. فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبته هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا رب، ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل: يا رب، أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذنني يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم الله وفرج الله همه ولا مغموم الله وكشف الله غمه ولا طالب حاجة الله وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
بلش. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Respected brothers, sisters and scholars, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I send my deepest and sincerest condolences to you all and to the entire Muslim Ummah, and in particular to the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, on this annual commemoration of the tragedy and demise of Sayeda Fatimiyya al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. My dear brothers and sisters, I welcome you all to Miraj's annual Fatimiyya program. Miraj is a new organization based in Sydney, Australia, and founded by Sayyid Abdul Majid Murtada, Sayyid Abdul Hussein Murtada, and Sayyid Muhammad El Sayyid, all working with the goal of making Miraj a focal point of spiritual growth and enlightenment. Miraj aims to provide a fresh approach to Islamic education and addresses the gaps currently existing within the community. As you can see on the banner over here, that Miraj plans on holding many initiatives such as Hawza lessons, Quran classes, as well as a host of lectures and programs. If you would like to stay up to date with these initiatives, you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram. Miraj has been in the making for over a year, and alhamdulillah, we are delighted to launch Miraj with this year's Fatimiyya program. As this is an initiative for the community, we are humbly asking for the community's donations to, inshallah, help this initiative grow, to, inshallah, better meet the needs of the community. Just for a note, for the rest of our Fatimiyya programs, we have advertised for a 7:30 p.m. on the poster to encourage everyone to arrive on time. We begin 8 p.m. with the recitation of the Holy Quran, followed by Salah, then the main lecture, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, for this year's Fatimiyya, we are honored and blessed to have with us His Eminent Sheikh Mahdi Rastani, has flown all the way from America. As some of you may know, Sheikh Mahdi and his brother Sheikh Amin are very respected scholars and founders of the Mizan Institute, which alhamdulillah we have the pleasure of hosting this Saturday. Inshallah, this Saturday, Al-Mizan Institute will be hosting a course from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at Al-Ahl Al-Bayt Islamic Center in Auburn, and the name of this course is titled The Secrets of Salah. You can find more information about this course and how to register on the Miraj Institute Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, we would like to thank Sheikh Kamal Musulmani and the helpers of Sayeda Zainab Center for allowing us and blessing us to host our Fatimiyya program here. Alhamdulillah. As we all know, we are here tonight to remember the legacy of Sayeda Fatimiyya al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, a lady who gave her all for Islam and for the message of her grandfather Muhammad. It is with no doubt that with us being here tonight, we are pleasing the heart of Sayeda Zahra, and by pleasing the heart of Sayeda Zahra, we are pleasing the heart of Rasulullah. And by pleasing the heart of Rasulullah, we are ultimately pleasing none other than the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our a'mal on these holy nights and to bless us with strengthening our connection and love for Sayeda Fatima, inshaAllah. Without taking any more of your time, I ask that we recite 3 of our loudest salawat as we welcome His Eminent Sheikh Mahdi to begin tonight's lecture. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
One more salawat, please.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, please recite a second loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. For the hastening and the return of our beloved 12th final loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I would like to begin, inshallah, tonight by thanking our dear brothers and sisters in Miraj Institute, as well as the brothers and sisters and the Sheikh involved with the Husayniyya for allowing us to hold these programs during these special nights in which we commemorate the martyrdom of our beloved mother, Lady Fatimiyya Zahra, salawatullahi salamuhu alayha. Loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. The reality is, there were many topics that I was considering to discuss during these nights, but this topic that we're going to be going through tonight and tomorrow night, and inshallah on the third night will be a separate topic, is one that I have found to be a gap in the understanding that the average Shia or Muslim has as it relates to their faith. And that is the concept or the topic of exploring the reasons behind Islamic rulings. This is a topic that typically is not discussed in our communities. It is a topic that, quite frankly, is usually not touched on. But I've come to see in many interactions that many times before taking a brother or a sister or a youth through the different rulings that we have in Islam, first they have to take some time to understand what is Islam's approach as it relates to the reasoning and the hikmah and the philosophy behind different Islamic rulings. And that is why this topic that we'll be going through tonight and tomorrow night is so critical. This is, of course, a topic that we find the relevance of in the societies that we live in today more than ever before. The reality is, in these societies that we live in today, every single practice of yours as a Muslim is questioned. This questioning sometimes is happening with the intention of undermining your faith. Sometimes the question is a genuine question. If you are a sister who practices hijab, you must have had a colleague, a friend, a relative who asks you, what's the wisdom and the philosophy behind this dress code that you have chosen for yourself? If you are a Muslim who practices and stays away from haram food, You must have had someone at one point or another ask you, why is this difference between halal food and haram food? Your colleagues at your workplace, in the university, at college, whatever the case might be, they must have asked you at one point or another, how come when we go to this bar or that bar, how come when we go to this company party or that company party, you can't join us, or you may not be able to take part in the activities with us? You might have had friends, colleagues ask you, this thing that you do 5 times a day, what's the reason behind it? What's the philosophy behind it? Why do you pray 5 times a day? These movements that you do, what's the reason behind it? What's the philosophy behind it? They might have asked you when Ramadan comes around, what's the wisdom and the philosophy behind fasting, and so on and so forth. Sometimes these questions have to do with the general concept of a practice in Islam. Sometimes they have to do with the details of that practice in Islam. And hence you find yourself in this situation very, very often. Sometimes you have an answer to these questions. Sometimes you don't have an answer to these questions. And therefore, tonight we want to take some time and tomorrow night to understand Islam's approach as it relates to asking why in Islam. When Islam tells you to do something, can you sit there and ask why? Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? The reality is the human being has one fundamental characteristic that maybe animals do not share with the human being. It's one of those things that's fitri, it's inherent to the human being. And that is a constant curiosity for the truth. Other animals, they look at the observations that they have around them in nature. They don't ask why too often. You're a human being. You have a sense of curiosity. You always want to go deeper. You always are asking why. This is what makes you, one of the things that makes you a human is this. It's inherent to the human being. Out of the 8 billion human beings you have on earth, all of them share this. They have an inherent characteristic, a curiosity for the truth. And the way that presents itself is by constantly asking why. This human being, he's different from the animals. The animals, they see natural phenomena happening around them. They don't ask why. That same natural phenomena happens in front of this human being. All of a sudden he asks why. Why did this happen? When the apple falls from the tree, the bird that's in the tree doesn't ask why did this apple fall. But the human being who's sitting under that tree, he asks why. What force was at work? What's happening here? I have to figure it out. This curiosity that he has for the truth is part of what makes him a human being. It's part of what makes him different. And the same way the human being has this curiosity when it comes to natural phenomena, he also has this curiosity when it comes to divine commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him you have to pray and your prayer has to be 5 times a day, nothing less, he wants to ask why. When he says this dress code, you have to adopt it, nothing but this, he wants to ask why. Therefore, tonight and tomorrow night we'll take some time to understand what is Islam's approach as it relates to asking why and exploring the wisdoms behind Islamic rulings from the Islamic perspective. And in order to do so, I will pose the following questions. Number 1, does Islam see asking questions about its rulings in a positive light or in a negative light? Is this a good thing I'm supposed to be doing? Or is this frowned upon in the Quran, in the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt? Number 2, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell the angels when they questioned his creation of Adam? These verses that I began the lecture with. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam and these angels said, why? What was the reaction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had as it relates to them? Number 3, did the companions of the Prophet, the companions of the Ahlul Bayt, did they have a habit of asking why? Did they used to go to them and say, why? What's the wisdom behind this ruling that you're telling us to do? Or was this not a thing in their relationship with the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt? Number 4, what claim did our first Imam, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, make as it relates to his knowledge? And how much would he use to push others and encourage others to come and ask and benefit from the knowledge that he carries? Number 5, what is the singular biggest mistake that parents, teachers, community leaders many times make when it comes to teaching our youth about their faith and the wisdom behind the rulings that we have in Islam? And number 6, and finally, couldn't have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us the wisdom behind every ruling and command that we have in Islam? And wouldn't have life become so much easier and so much sweeter if you knew the wisdom behind every single command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Wouldn't you have looked so much cooler in front of your non-Muslim colleague if he asked you, why do you pray 5 times a day? And all of a sudden you gave him some deep scientific reason for it. Wouldn't have this been amazing? And wouldn't it have been easier for you and I to embrace this faith if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had shared all of these wisdoms with us? And if He hasn't, what is the wisdom and the reason for that? Tonight, inshallah, we'll delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let us begin from here. This human being, he questions everything. The other creatures, the other animals, they don't have this characteristic. They don't go about things in this manner. When the cow is grazing on his grass, he's not wondering, why is this grass green? Why is the sky blue? It's not what he's wondering. He's grazing on his grass. Life is good. Things are going on, yes? This human being, however, every time he sees a natural phenomenon, he asks, why? What's going on here? I want to know more. He's curious. The honeybee never sits there and says, let's get together and discuss what happened that these human beings came and took our honey. The honeybee never does that. The honeybee just says, the honey's gone, we're going to produce more honey. It is the way it is. If you do that to the human being, no, he'll huddle up. He'll say, well, let's figure out why this happened. What was the reason behind it? How can we prevent it in the future? So on and so forth. This is one of those things that makes the human being what he is and who he is. And so the question is, the same way the human being has these questions as it relates to nature and normal observations we have around us, is the human being supposed to have these same questions when it comes to divine commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want the human being to even ask these questions? When He says you pray 5 times a day, does He want you to ask why? Or does He want you to keep quiet and not say anything at all? Which one is it from the Islamic perspective? If I sit there and I ask why, is this a positive thing? Or is this a negative thing? Is this seen in a positive light? Or is this seen in a negative light? To answer this question, we have to go all the way to the beginning of our history. Our history starts from that famous story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates in the Quran and the conversations and the discussions with the angels. Because one thing that happened the moment Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told these angels that He wanted to create you and I, or our father Adam at least, the first thing they did, before praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before saying this is an amazing plan, before any of this stuff, what did they say? They said, wait a second, why are you doing this? Well, we praise you, we take care of, if you need someone to praise you, we do that. But you're trying to bring this creature, he will shed blood. He's going to create corruption. Oh Allah, why? Why are you creating him? From the moment the human being came into the picture, the why was there. And the angels raised this question to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. And nowhere in the verses of the Quran does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turn around to them and say, how dare you ask why? He never said that. Nowhere in the verses of the Quran does He turn around and say, I'm Allah. You don't ask why over here. He didn't say that. He said, I know some stuff. You guys don't know that stuff. I know some wisdoms. You guys don't know those wisdoms. And then what did He do? He proceeded to demonstrate those wisdoms. He brought Adam. He taught him some stuff. These angels figured out, oh, this is a different thing. He's not like us. He's a different thing. There's nothing like him in the world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. He has a place in this world. Never did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sit there and blame them or scorn them. Why are you asking why? No, He said, you have a question, you're asking why? Here's why. Not only will I tell you, I'll show you. He demonstrated for them. And this verse of the Quran and this story then sets the tone for us. It seems as though, generally speaking, Islam doesn't really have a problem with you asking why. At least categorically, you can't say that Islam has a problem with it. Maybe sometimes it does, maybe sometimes it doesn't. But you can't say fundamentally, Islam wants you to sit there, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you to pray 5 times a day, I don't know, observe this dress code, this, that, it doesn't seem like fundamentally he says you can never ask why. This is what this verse teaches us at least. The whole point of this story was this. You move on from the verses of the Quran, you get deeper into the way that Ahlul Bayt taught us to practice our faith. And you find when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt, not only were they open to this idea of people asking why, they used to encourage people to come and benefit from their knowledge. So you read, for example, this narration is in Amali of Shaykh al-Saduq. He says, when the moment came where Ali ibn Abi Talib was finally recognized by the people as the Khalifa of the time. Yes, 20, 25 years have passed. Finally, he's given this opportunity. The narration says he came, he sat on the mimbar. فَسَعِدَ الْمِمْبَرِ. He was wearing the amama of the Prophet. He had with him the sword of the Prophet. مُتَنَعِلًا نَعْلَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. He was the shoes of the Prophet, everything. The narration says he sat there on the mimbar. And this is a claim that if you make, either you really know what you're talking about, or you have no idea what you're talking about. There's no other third category. If you make the claim that Ali ibn Abi Talib is about to make, either you really know what you're talking about, or you have no idea what you're talking about. The narration says he sat on the mimbar. He put his fingers into one another like this. And he looked at people. And he said, Saluni qabla an tafqiduni. Ask me before you lose me. Saluni amma shi'tum. Ask me whatever you like. And it seems from the narrations this happened on a number of occasions. It seems as though this wasn't a one-time thing. It happened over and over again. He said, Saluni fa inna indi ilma al-awwalina wal-akhirin. Ask me, because the knowledge of all of those who have come before and all of those who will come later, I have it. Ask me based on the Torah, and I will answer based on the Torah. Ask me from the Injil, I will answer based on the Injil. Ask me from the Quran, and I will respond based on the Quran. Hatta yantiq al-Quran. I will answer in such a delicate and accurate manner that the Quran itself will come to life and it will say, Sadaqa Aliyun. He's right. He said, ask me. It's interesting. This is such a big claim. If you sit there and make this claim, like I said, either you really are prepared for all the questions or you have no idea what you're talking about, and the latter wouldn't make sense with his life. So it only remains the former. Not only was this such a big claim that they recorded it in history, later imams who used to come, they used to ask them, is it true your grandfather used to say this? They asked Imam al-Baqir, is this true? Your grandfather used to say this? Saluni amma shi'tum, ask me whatever you want. And he said, yes, this is what our grandfather used to say. And the narration continues and says, Imam al-Baqir then, he said, let people go wherever they want to go. فَلْيَذْهَبِ النَّاسِ حَيْثُ شَاءُوا. They can go wherever they want to go. But if they want knowledge, they have to come here. وَأَشَارَ بِيَدِهِ إِلَىٰ بَيْتِهِ. اللهم صل على محمد. He said, yes, this is what our grandfather used to say. This was the claim that my grandfather used to make. So they were encouraging people to come and ask questions, apparently. Apparently, it wasn't this thing where they said, no, you can't ask why. Don't bring up anything. No, apparently, you could ask why. Apparently, they wanted you to ask why too. In fact, they answered questions in situations that you and I would be considering it too extreme and say, Ya ibn Rasulullah, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, you don't have to answer these questions. But he wanted to answer the questions. He wanted people to come and ask why. The narration says the battle of Jamal was set up. Battle of Jamal is such a critical part of history. It changed the course of Islamic history. This is the first time now you have Muslims standing in front of each other. The narration says the battlefield was set. The armies are set. On this side is Ali ibn Abi Talib with some of the Sahaba. On the other side you had some of the other Sahaba, yes? Everything is set to go. The narration says all of a sudden this Arabi came. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I have a question about Tawheed. Can you answer my question about Tawheed? And the narration says the companions, they were ready to get rid of him. They said, can't you see? Now's not the time for questions. The battlefield is set. The armies are set. This is this side, that side. You're not supposed to be asking these questions now. And Ali ibn Abi Talib looked at him and looked at his companions. And he said, let me answer his question. Because the answers to these questions is why we've come to this battlefield. And he went on this long hadith that yes, Tawheed has 4 types. 2 of them yajuzan, 2 of them la yajuzan, and so on and so on. They were constantly looking for people's questions. They never sat there and said, don't come and ask why. Just say yes and that's it. No, they were looking for questions. And you also find this in the seerah of our beloved mother. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In the seerah of Lady Fatima, you find the importance he gave to the questions that people had. So the narration says, this lady came to the house of Lady Fatima. She came to the house, she knocked on the door. Lady Fatima came to the door. She said, what have you come for? Said, I have an elderly mother. She has questions about her salat. She doesn't know how to pray, these details, yes? And she has a couple questions. I've come to ask these questions of you. She said, sure. So this lady at the door started asking 1 question, 2 questions. All of a sudden, it turned into 3, 4, 7, 8, 10. 10 questions later, this lady turned to Lady Fatima and said, I'm embarrassed now. I told you a couple questions. It turned into 10 questions. I took your time. And what did Lady Fatima tell her? Lady Fatima told her, you have no idea the reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for me every time I answer one of your questions. And then she gave her an analogy. She said, when you come and ask these questions, yes, I'm fatigued. Yes, I've been working the whole day. Yes, maybe I made some food for Hassan and Hussein and all of this. She said, but let me ask you something. This is addressing the lady. She said, if you were very fatigued after a very long day, tired, you worked the whole day, but someone came to you at the end of the day and said, hey, if you pick up this bag of food or whatever and take it to this other place, something that might take you 5 minutes, whatever, small task. But in return, they told you that they would give you 100,000 dinar. They would give you 100,000 golden coins. You're tired, but they're telling you 100,000 coins. Would you do it? And the lady said, well, of course, yeah, I'd do that. I'm tired, but for that much money, yeah, I'll take on that task. And she said, every time you come and ask me a question, this is why I answer. So they had this knowledge. They used to encourage people to come and ask them. And this is such a seerah of the Ahlul Bayt that you find there are whole books in our school of thought that are compiled in which the narrations that are put together are simply narrations where people used to come and ask the Ahlul Bayt why. There's a famous book of Shaykh al-Saduq, as he had many books. One of his famous books, Ilal al-Shara'i'. Yes, the reasons behind the legislations. All of this book is compiled narrations in which people come and ask the Ahlul Bayt, why? Why, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, do we pray? Why, O Lady Fatima, do we fast? Why is the dunya called the dunya? Why is the akhirah called the akhirah? Why is Fatima called Fatima? All these whys. It was such a common thing. There's books compiled on it. And these whys that they used to come and ask were of 2 types. They were of 2 types. The first type of why is the type of why when someone comes and asks, in reality, they're not asking for the wisdom and the philosophy behind the ruling. They're asking why, because they want to understand what is the proof that you're saying this is part of Islam. I'll give you some examples, because depending on what type of why you're asking, Islam's approach is very different. The first type of why is where you come and ask why. You're asking why, you're saying, where in Islam does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this? The answer to this type of why is either a hadith, or it's a verse of Quran, or seerah of Ahlul Bayt, or things of that nature. You have a Sunni friend, this Sunni friend comes and tells you, why do you combine prayers? He's not asking about the wisdom, philosophy, some scientific reason behind it. No, he's saying, where's the verse, where's the hadith that gives you permission to combine your prayers? Yes? He says, why do you pray with a turba? He's not asking for some scientific reason. He's not asking for the wisdom behind it. He's saying, where's the hadith? Where's the verse of the Quran? Yes? Where are you getting this from? This is the first type of why. There's a second type of why. The type of why where you are asking for the wisdom, the philosophy, the reasoning behind it. These are two different types of whys. The first type of why, brothers and sisters, what is Islam's approach with regards to it? The first type of why, not only is it okay to ask, you have to always ask. In fact, if you don't ask that why, you end up in a situation where your culture and your religion end up very much intermined and intertwined with one another. They get mixed with each other. You can't even tell them apart from each other at this point. Someone says, well, this is halal, you can do it. You have to ask why. Where's the reason for it? Someone says this is wajib, you have to do this. Say, why? If you don't do this, you end up in a situation where culture and religion, they get mixed with each other. Every time someone says, this is wajib, you have to do this, you have to ask why? What's the reason for it? You're not asking for the wisdom. You're asking what's the proof that this is part of Islam. Yes? Every time we say, yeah, this is not a problem, this is halal, you can go ahead. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Why? Where did it say it's not a big deal? I want to listen to this music. Oh yeah, it's okay, no problem, go ahead. Why? What's the reason behind it? Sometimes there are things culture will tell you it's halal, it's okay, it's not a big deal. And Islam will say, no, it's a big deal to me, it's haram, you can't do this. Sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes there are things culture will prohibit, and Islam is like, this is completely fine. If you want to go ahead with it, I have no problem with it. And so you have to ask this why all the time. Why are you saying this is part of our faith and our religion? And you might say, well, Sheikh, I have a 9-to-5 job. I don't have time for asking all these whys and all this kind of stuff. And I agree with you. We have 9-to-5 jobs. We have our own lives. This is why you have someone asking these questions on your behalf. His name is your marja. That's his job. You and I don't ask that question. He asks that question on your behalf. Every time he says something is wajib, you have a life of your own. You don't have time for this. He goes and asks why not, what's the hadith, what's the verse, let's see if this hadith holds up, all of this kind of stuff. You don't have time for that. You're not supposed to have time for that. That's his job. Yes? He goes, he asks this question. This is how you separate culture from religion. Because if he points to something and he says this is wajib and this is the reason for it, it's no more cultural. This is what Islam wants from you. But if you don't have an answer to that question, well then this is cultural. This is not a matter of religion anymore. If you don't ask this why, when it comes to something that is done in our community, when it comes to something that we do in our day-to-day life, if you don't ask this why, brothers and sisters, you will end up in one of these two camps. Either you will become the super extreme Muslim, who for him everything is haram. Can't do this, this is haram. Can't do that, that's haram. Can't eat this food, it's haram. Or you'll end up like the super liberal Muslim, where everything is halal. It's not a problem. Yeah, go ahead, it's okay, no problem. Yeah, you can do this. Yeah, it's okay, no problem. You can do this, you can do that. Why? Because he's not asking why. He's not looking for dalil from Islam. Yes? He's just taking things. can I go attend this gathering? Yeah, it's okay, no problem. When you go, do you feel like you lost spirituality? No, it's okay, then you can go. As if spirituality, we measure it based on feelings, emotions only. I skipped my salat because, it was a little difficult. Is that okay? Yeah, it's not a big deal. As long as your heart is pure, you're a good person at your heart, yeah? You still feel like you're a good person, yeah? Okay, no problem, it's okay, yeah. Like Imam Sadiq didn't have anything better to do in his life than to come and explain what's wajib, what's haram, yes? He had nothing better to do, na'udhu billah. So when he said all this stuff, he just said it as extra stuff. In reality, the measure to your spirituality is what? It's in your heart. If you feel good, you're good. If you don't feel good, it's a problem. You have to constantly ask this why. This is the first type of why. We'll move on to the second type, and inshallah we'll be wrapping up. Allah salawat, please. The second type of why is where things get a bit tricky. I'm asking why now. You can't give me hadith. I'm asking why now. You can't tell me, this verse of the Quran. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking the wisdom behind it. I'm asking the philosophy behind it. I'm asking the reasoning behind it. When I do this deed, what maslahah does it have for me? What hikmah is there behind it? This is what I'm asking. The second type of why you can ask in Islam. Not only is it okay, not only is it not frowned upon, it's recommended. Except, here's the catch. You can't ask with the intention of, explain to me why I have to do this, and if you don't give me the reason, or you give me the reason and it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not doing it. You can't ask with that intention. You can ask why. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't tell you. But you can't ask with the intention of, if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm out of here. You can't do that. And here's the thing, brothers and sisters, and I bring this up because it's very clear to me that this is where our communities are headed. Another salawat, please. Thank you. This is where our communities are headed. Where people will only practice the teaching of the faith if the reason behind it makes sense to them. You might say, well, Sheikh, what's the problem? It's not a big deal. Islam is a logical reasoning, so we have nothing to worry about. Everything in Islam has a reason, so what's the big deal? I'll ask for the reason, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me why, and I listen. The problem is that's not the case. The problem is, in Islam, you have 100, if not thousands of rules where we do not know the wisdom behind it. So wait a second, I thought this faith is a logical faith, and I thought we're not supposed to have blind faith and all of it. I thought there's supposed to be like a reason behind it. There is a reason behind everything. We don't know many of them. There are hundreds or thousands of rules in Islam. We don't know the reason behind them. Let me put it this way. It is impossible for someone to practice Islam if their way of practicing Islam is going to be, I'll practice it if you tell me why. This isn't going to work. It's impossible. You say, why? Because there's all these rules, we don't know the reasons behind them. If you were to categorize the rules that we have in Islam in terms of whether we know the reason behind them or not, you'll find they fall under 4 categories. Yes, the first category of rules are those rules that we know the reason behind it anyways. As a human being, you don't need Islam to tell you the reason behind it. Islam says, for example, you can't murder. Okay, hopefully no one's going to come to me after the lecture and say, Sheikh, I have one question. You said Islam says don't. Why, Shaykhna? What's the problem? If you ask that question, we have bigger problems, yeah? Shaykhna, you said we can't lie. Why? What's the philosophy behind it? You said we can't cheat someone in some transaction. Shaykhna, I want to know what's the philosophy behind this? Okay, these are some rules we have in Islam like this, yes? But Islam is not just these rules. Okay, this is category number 1. The philosophy behind it is apparent, so you don't even have to ask why, yes? It's category number 1. Category number 2, there are rules in Islam The Ahlul Bayt told us what the reason is for them. Lady Fatima herself has a number of narrations. Salat, why do you pray salat? She said, Tanzihan min al-kibr. Why do you fast? This is the reason. We have some narrations, they tell us the reason behind these things, yes? The companion of the sixth Imam asked him, why can't I do sajda on something that is wearable or edible? The Imam told him, he said, sajda is this moment of intimacy between you and God. You can't bring the icons of the pleasures of the dunya into this relationship. And the things that are wearable and edible, they are icons of the pleasures of this world. You can't bring them in. This is a moment between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't get the dunya involved in it. So you can't do anything on wearable or edible, because if you're doing really well in life, you have beautiful clothing and you eat really well. So this is a moment between you, all of this. So we have narrations. Sometimes they've explained the reasons behind some rulings. This is category number 2. Okay, wonderful. Category number 3, some rules, it's not apparent by itself, and the Ahlul Bayt didn't tell us either. But over time, science has grown, and science can tell us. Yeah, maybe back in the day, someone had doubts about if I drink alcohol, what type of negative effects can it have on me? Today's science has shed light on this. Yeah, statistics has shed light on this. The type of problems it creates, so on and so forth, all of this kind of stuff. Okay, wonderful. These 3 categories. And then you come to category number 4. Category number 4 are those rules, mainly the detailed rules in Islam. There are thousands of them, and we don't know the reason behind them. Get used to this idea. We don't know the reason behind them. And if you sit down and think for 5 minutes, you can come up with 10 examples yourself. I'll give you a very simple one, yes? You ask any average follower of Ahlul Bayt or any Muslim, you say, why do you do wudu? He'll give you a lecture. Wudu is for spiritual awakening, brother. When you do wudu, you prepare yourself for this meeting and all of this happens, yes? That's partially true. And then you ask him, so if this is the hikmah and the wisdom behind wudu, and you did this very eloquent speech about the hikmah and the wisdom behind wudu, why is it that every Shia marja will tell me that when I'm doing wudu, if instead of going downwards, I go upwards on purpose? All of a sudden, this whole wudu batil, your salat is batil, why are you doing this? You're not allowed to do this. What happened to the spiritual awakening? Just because I went upwards, now there's no spiritual awakening? Now because I went upwards, now all of a sudden the whole wisdom of Islam fell apart? So what's the wisdom behind this? We don't know. The only thing we know is Imam Sadiq was doing wudu, this is how he did it. But why? We don't know. You ask the average Muslim, why do you eat halal? They'll give you different reasons. Now, the validity of these points, I don't know. I'm not commenting on that. But they'll tell you, oh, this is more humane. They'll tell you it's cleaner, it's healthier. Valid, invalid, doesn't matter. Okay, let's say it's because it's more humane, it's cleaner, it's healthier, all of these things, yes? Okay, wonderful. So now, when you want to do dhabiha, right? You want to do dhibh of the animal, right? You're saying all of this changes if the person who's doing the dhibh is not Muslim and he's kafir? Because all of these scholars will tell you this is not a valid dhibh anymore, yeah? What happened to all the wisdoms and the philosophies and all of this? It's still cleaner, it's still more humane, it's still, if those are true, it still applies in this situation too. Yes, what happened to all of that? Why all of a sudden you're doing this dhibh? It has to be towards Qibla. If you don't do it towards Qibla, oh, it's najis, maita, you can't touch it, terrible. What, it's not more humane now? It's not cleaner now? It's not? And thousands of other examples that you can come up with. Where the detailed rules of Islam, we don't know the reasons behind them. And this is one of the biggest mistakes, as I wrap up. This is one of the biggest mistakes, brothers and sisters, parents, teachers, community leaders, sometimes even speakers, when they are projecting what Islam is, this is one of the biggest mistakes that they make. Because they want to project Islam as a logical faith, they make it seem as though we know the reason behind everything that we do. And that could not be further from the truth. And Islam, brothers and sisters, is not shy about this idea. Islam is not shy about this. Sometimes people get hesitant. Oh, Shaykh, I thought you were supposed to enhance our faith in this religion. It doesn't really feel like we're enhancing our faith in this. It feels like we're doubting things. No. When you were walking in, there was a big banner. When you wanted to embrace this faith, when you wanted to embrace the faith of Islam, there was this big banner outside before you walked in. You know what that banner said? It said Islam. If you want Islam, you come here. You know what Islam means? Say, it means peace. No, it doesn't mean peace. It means submission. Islam is a religion of peace. But the word means what? Submission. They had a big banner outside when you were coming in. They said, this is the place you come, you submit. It's like, sometimes you don't know why, but you submit. That's the biggest banner they had outdoors. And then you came inside and you're like, well, can you explain to me why? Otherwise, I'm not submitting. You didn't see the banner outdoors? You didn't see it outside? The big one? There's only one name for your religion. It was Islam. You skipped that part. Someone says, well, Shaykh, we shouldn't have blind faith. I thought our faith is a logical faith. Yes, this Islam, when it comes to the fundamentals of this faith, that's where you have to ask all of your questions. Yes, you have to ask. If you don't know if there's God out there, wonderful. You should ask 1,000,000 questions. You don't know if the prophet's out there? Wonderful. You should ask 1,000,000 questions about that. And you shouldn't stop asking until you're convinced. You don't know if this is the word of God? Okay, wonderful. You have to go and ask, and you have to have long discussions. Yes? But then when you were sold on all of that and convinced on all of that, then when it comes to this other stuff, you saw the big banner outside. It said Islam. It said submission. It didn't say you practice if it makes sense to you. No, brothers and sisters, it is impossible to practice this faith if our approach is going to be, make it make sense to me, otherwise, I'm not doing it. And this is a practice that you find is becoming extremely prevalent in our younger generation. And it's not their fault. They're trying to take the intellectual approach. They live in a society where they're taught everything has to make sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't even go with it. This is only a natural consequence of the times that we are living in. And it's not a bad thing. You can always ask why. You can't just ask why with the intention of either you make it make sense to me or I'm out of here. Otherwise, this faith, brothers and sisters, you cannot practice it. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You say, well, fasting, easy, I fast. Why is it when you fast, some of the sins, they break your fast. Some of the bigger sins, they don't break your fast. Some sins, you attribute a lie to the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt or to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happens? Your fast breaks. Na'udhu billah, na'udhu billah, na'udhu billah. Someone murders someone. Does the fast break? Wait a second, this makes no sense. Everyone will tell you, murder is like the biggest thing. The Quran talks about it. This is terrible. This is that. Yes? We don't know the reasons behind it. We don't know the reasons behind a lot of these rules. Yes? And the proper approach is not to sit there and say, no, Islam is logical. There's a reason behind it. There is a reason behind everything. We don't know the reason behind everything. And that then begs this question, which is going to be our introduction into tomorrow's night's talk. If there is a reason for everything, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that knowledge, why couldn't He have just told us? Wouldn't life be so much easier if He had just told us what the wisdom and the reason is? If He had told me, you pray 5 times a day, and it's 5 times because of this reason. If He had just told me, you pray Fajr 2 rakats and Dhuhr Asr 4 rakats, and this is the reason. Wouldn't have my faith been so much stronger? Wouldn't I have looked so much cooler in front of my non-Muslim colleague who asked me, why do you do this sajda on this dirt? And I could pull out of my pocket some scientific reasoning for him. Wouldn't so many more people embrace the faith if we knew the wisdoms behind these rulings? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this knowledge. His hands aren't tied. He's God, yeah? So He can tell us everything. Why didn't He just tell us everything? How amazing would it have been if when the Ahlul Bayt said, you know what, you're not supposed to go upwards, and they told you the reason why. And you went to your Sunni friend and you said, listen, this is why we do this. Wouldn't so many more people embrace the followers of the Ahlul Bayt and this school of thought if we had that option? What is the wisdom behind some of these rules? And why hasn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shared these wisdoms? That is the talk that inshallah we will leave for tomorrow night. I will end inshallah with a couple du'as and then the brother with the recitation of the masa'ib. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are amongst those who are the true followers of the Ahlul Bayt, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of those who are in difficulty and in pain, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees them from their difficulty and pains, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of those who have hajat, all of those who have asked us for dua during these days and nights, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them their du'as and their hajat, inshaAllah. And finally, last but not least, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the return of our beloved 12th Imam, bin Nabiyyi wa alih. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
على حب مولاتنا فاطمة سلام الله عليها رحم الله من أعاد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آلك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك وعلى ابنتك المظلومة فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. ملطومة الخد فاطمة مسقطة الجنين فاطمة مكسورة الأضلاع فاطمة سلام الله عليها. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أيا فاطمة يا بضعة المصطفى يا فاطمة فاطمة يا بضعة المصطفى يا فاطمة يا بضعة المصطفى رحلت فاسود النهار بناظري ومن بعدك الأيام صرن لياليا قد كنت ذات حما بظل محمد لا أختشي ضيمي وكان حما ليا واليوم أختشي ظالمي وأدفع ظالمي بردائي ماذا على من شم تربة أحمد ألا يشم مدى الزمان غواليا قد كنت ذات حمان بظل محمد لا أختشي ضيمي وكان حما ليا قد كنت بظل محمد مطمئنة واليوم تسلمني إلى أعدائي عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصاب مولاتنا فاطمة سلام الله عليها. It is narrated that during the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam's illness, his daughter Fatima went into his room to see him on his deathbed. He looked at her and said, "Ya Fatima, ya اعلمي بأنك سوف تظلمين من بعدي." Oh my dear daughter Fatima, know that you are the oppressed one after my death, and you are the vulnerable one. Then he said to her, "Ya Fatima, man ظلمك فقد ظلمني ومن سرك فقد سرني ومن تقرب إليك فقد تقرب إلي." Whoever pleases you pleases me. Whoever visits you visits me, because you are from me and I am from you, and you are part of me, and you are my soul and my body. Then he said, "Ya Fatima, ashku ila Allah man zalamaki wa man adaki." I complain to Allah about whoever hurts and harms you. Oh my dear daughter, I can imagine how you are going to call for help and not hear any response. These words made Fatima alayha salam cry and weep for her beloved father. The Prophet told Fatima, "Oh Fatima, do not cry? She replied by saying, oh my dear father, I am not crying over my tragedy, but I'm crying for your absence. لا أبكي على مصابي لكنما أبكي على غيابك ورحيلك عنا. I cannot imagine this house without your presence. I cannot imagine this house without hearing your voice, oh my dear father. Then he said to her, oh Fatima, know that you are the first out of my holy household to follow me after I die. That's when Fatima felt happiness again. It is narrated that while the Prophet was on his deathbed, every time he would see the faces of Ali, Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, he would cry so much. They asked him, oh Ya Rasulullah, why do you cry every time you see the faces of Ali, Fatima, Hassan and Hussein? He replied, because I imagine what will happen to them after my death. He said, I imagine Ali alayhi salam getting struck by a sword on his head while praying. I imagine how they will slap the face of my daughter Fatima. أين المنادي وفاطمة أيها السيدة. What else ya Rasulullah? I imagine how Imam Hassan gets poisoned and throws up his liver right in front of his sister Zainab. I imagine how Imam Hussein gets slaughtered in the land of Karbala. أيوا حسينا أيوا سيدا. This is why when Fatima witnessed the death of her father, she knew the catastrophes that would now befall her and her holy household. صاحت بويا ما نقدر على غضمه وفجايع تروح وين وتترك الإسلام ضايع. يا ابو ابراهيم لا تروح ليتها قبلك راحت الروح. يا فاطمة فاطمة يا نبع الحنان. فاطمة يا قرة سيد الأنام. فاطمة يا أم أبيها. فاطمة يا فاطمة جميعا. فاطمة صلى عليك ملك السماء. All together. فاطمة صلى عليك ملك السماء. فاطمة تبكيك عين العين الأوفياء. تبكيك عين الأوفياء. قد كنت ذات حما بظل محمد لا أختشي ضيمي وكان حما لي يا الله. اللهم بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها فرج عنا يا الله. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والنصر والعافية ونحن في خير وعافية. قربنا إليك ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين أبدا. اقض حوائجنا، يسر أمورنا، شافي وعافي مرضانا. ارحم اللهم أمواتنا، أموات الحاضرين، أموات المؤسسين لهذا الصرح ببركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
مأجورين إن شاء الله. أجركم على فاطمة الزهراء. قم على حيلك واسي الزهرة بهاي الليلة. ويلي عالزهرة المظلومة، ويلي عاشت وماتت مهضومة، ويلي ويلي عالزهرة المظلومة، ويلي جاوب بارك الله بيك. هلا عاشت وماتت مهضومة، على أمي حسين أجر بعدها، ترى الغالي صعوب يا ناس بعده، جمور فقد النبي بالقلب بعده، يسر ورافق أصواب الزكية، ولع ما شاء الله. هلا ولع الزهرة المظلومة، بقلبي وقدت نيران ياهم، اخلاق الفكير كل ساعة ياهم، الكسرى وضلع أمي منين ياهم، ونفسي البايعة وسيدي البرية، ويلي ويلي عزة لو انهى المصايب هاجما فاطم، لو انهى وتون والكون كله يوين، لو انهى السما والارض ينطبقن، لو انهى رفعت شفينها الرب البريه، رفعت شفينها الرب البرية. الشاعر كامل السعيد يا غاتي. طاحت الزهرة صاحت بعبرة، صاحت بعبرة، طاحت الزهرة
عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي، عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي. هذا جوابك. عجل الله فرجك يا عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي. طاحت الزهرة صاحت بعبره، صاحت بعبره، طاحت الزهرة. عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي، عجل بعد عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي، عجل الله فرجك، عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي، عجل الله فرجك. يما عصروني وطحت مهشوم صدري، يما عصروني وطحت مهشوم صدري، من الضلع والصدر يا ابني دمي يجري، ما تجي لي وتشاهد حال أمري، يما والنار على باب الدار تسري، يما والنار على باب الدار تسري، محسن بدمه مات من هضمه، مات من هضمه، محسن بدمه. عجل الله فرجك يا مهدي، عجل بعلى صوتك. عجل الله فرجك، ما شاء الله. عجل الله فرجك. هاي يما سطرة وخدي أصحاب الضغينة، يما سطرة وخدي أصحاب الضغينة، وعيني مجروحة وتوين روحي الحزينة، وعيني مجروحة وتوين روحي الحزينة، وراح محسن مني أصرخ ابني وينه، وعلي للمسجد خذوه مقيدينه، وعلي للمسجد خذوه مقيدينه، حايرة بأمري أصرخ وتدري، أصرخ وتدري، حايرة بأمري. عجل الله فرجك يا، عجل الله فرجك يا، بعلى صوتك. عجل الله فرجك، ما شاء الله. عجل الله فرجك. هي خلاف حيدر رحت لن قنفذ ولاني، الشاعر محمد علي نادب الكربلائي. خلاف حيدر رحت لن قنفذ ولاني، صوته فوق متوني تتهاوى اجاني، لزمت بيدي حزام حيدر ما رعاني، لزمت بيدي حزام حيدر ما رعاني، صار يشتم بيا يمه من لفاني، وصار يشتم بيا يمه من لفاني، ما رعى حجابي من حرق بابي، من حرق بابي ما رعى حجابي. عجل الله فرجه، بعد عجل 40 من العدا هجموا علي، بامر من الثاني ضربوها الزكية، بامر من الثاني ضربوها الزكية، يما جروني وطحت فوق الوطية، يما جروني وطحت فوق الوطية، واليتامى ويايا عبرتهم جرية، واليتامى ويايا عبرتهم جرية، من ألم ضلعي صرختي ودمعي، صرختي ودمعي، من ألم ضلعي عجل الله فرجه. ما شاء الله بعد عجل الله فرجك. يما يا مهدي متى ترد لي جوابي، تطفي نار أهل السقيف على بابي، وتطفي نار أهل السقيف على بابي، وتطفي نار اللي بعباتي وبثيابي، وتطفي نار اللي بعباتي وبثيابي، هذا دمعي وغربتي وهذا خطابي، هذا دمعي وغربتي وهذا خطابي، ثاري يمته يمته تانيته، يمه تانيته، ثاري يمته عجل الله فرجه. بعد عجل الله هلا ما شاء الله عجل الله فرجه. هي يما منتظرة أشوفك صاحب الثار، يما منتظرة أشوفك صاحب الثار، انت وارث دمي الشايل الفقار، انت وارث دمي الشايل الفقار، انهض انهض شيل راية علي الكرار، انهض انهض شيل راية علي الكرار، صفي بيهم أبد لا ترحم الأشرار، صفي بيهم أبد لا ترحم الأشرار، يما منتظرة ظنوة الزهرة، ظنوة الزهرة، يما منتظرة عجل الله فرجك. واويلا يا زهرة واويلا، واويلا من السقيف الظالمة وعدوانها، من السقيف الظالمة وعدوانها، باب فاطم وجرت نيرانها، باب فاطم وجرت نيرانها، واويلا يا زهرة واويلا، واويلا هلا واويلا، الله الله حرقه والدار الهبط بجبرائيل، شايل القرآن بيده من الجليل، حرقه والدار الهبط بجبرائيل، شايل القرآن بيده من الجليل، إنا أعطيناك يقرأ على الخليل، باب دار الزهرة وجه دخانها، باب دار الزهرة وجه دخانها، واويلا يا
الزهراء واويلا واويلا بعد واويلا الله الله بأمر من الثاني جمعوها الحطب بأمر من الثاني جمعوها الحطب شبوا النيران والباب التهب ما رعاه الفاطمة الثاني بغضب ما رعاه الفاطمة الثاني بغضب من سطرها وطاحت بتربانها من سطرها وطاحت بتربانها واويلا واويلا هلا واويلا بعد واويلا الله الله سورة الكوثر تون من المصاب سورة الكوثر تون من المصاب والضلع مهشوم من عصرة الباب والصدر ينزف ومحسن عالتراب والصدر ينزف ومحسن عالتراب والسقيفة مزقت قرآنها والسقيفة مزقت قرآنها واويلا واويلا واعلى اعلى هلا واويلا بعد واويلا الله الله فاطمة فاطمة 18 عام بهالحياة بعينها سطرة غدر من الطغاة صارت الزهراء تطلب للممات صارت الزهراء تطلب للممات بنت محمد هايمة بأحزانها بنت محمد هايمة بأحزانها واويلا 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 محمد علي نادي بالكربلاء للفرض من توقف الزهرة بدمع للفرض من توقف الزهرة بدمع ايد تدعي لربها ايد على الضلع ام حسن وحسين ويلي بيا وضيع ام حسن وحسين ويلي بيا وضيع ساهرة وتهل دموع جفانها واويلا 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 الله الله بكل فرض تدعي الزكية فاطمة عجل يا رب فواتي وخاتمه عجل يا رب الوفاة وخاتمه عندي شكوى عالسقيفة الظالمة عندي شكوى عالسقيفة ظالمة تعبد اللات وهبل واوثانها تعبد اللات وهبل واوثانها واويلا واويلا بيت الدعاء واويلا بعد واويلا الله الله نقرا والقرآن والهادي الأمين نقرا والقرآن والهادي الأمين غصبة وخلافة أمير المؤمنين ذولا مو إسلام ذولا مشركين ذولا مو إسلام بعد ذولا مو إسلام هي ودعت أيتامها برحمانها ودعت أيتامها برحمانها واويلا 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 يا زهراء اللهم نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله عجل لوليك الفرج واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه يا الله اللهم تقبل منا هذا القليل وتقبل من المؤسسين ولأمواتهم وأمواتكم وأموات السامعين والجالسين والروح الطاهرة لفاطمة الزهراء نهدي ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقها صلوات فاطمية بأعلى الأصوات.